Carcinization is the process by which everything evolves into a crab. It's really just a named member in a series of ongoing phenomena called convergent evolution, where animals independently evolve similar methods of adapting to similar environments. There are plenty of other examples, and you know what that means. That means everything is evolving into all of them, too! The way I'm judging this is via false and true species, one clade with a name and other disparate animals that share the same name. We'll start in the mammals with foxes. The true foxes are the members of the genus Vulpes. False foxes, or South American foxes, are more closely related to dogs and jackals, while the closest relative of true foxes are the raccoon dogs, which are also not true dogs, which kind of gets to my judgment of foxes, which is that every dog-like carnivore basically looks the same, and if these didn't happen to be close relatives of humans, we would use one common name for all of them. I mean, really, what's even the difference between these? The coloration, the shape of the ears and skull? Really, if you weren't experienced in knowing these were different animals, you would say they are just as similar as these two. So I'm saying no, not everything is evolving into a fox. Next up, we have true seals, family Phocidae, and the false seals, or fur seals, in subfamily Arctocephalinae. Despite the misnomer, there's really not that much similar between them. They definitely have external ears, they use primarily fur instead of blubber, they have the developed front limbs of sea lions, and they're highly social. Really, the main difference is that they're smaller, which I guess is enough, and also they have a less pointy face. So again, not really a warranted name, and not everything is evolving into a seal. True shrews are one of a surviving group of true insectivores, alongside hedgehogs and moles. Since not everything that eats insects is directly related, there are plenty of other shrews across the mammals, pretty much anything small and furry enough. The true shrews are thusly defined by their incomplete cheek bones, and the fact that they lose their baby teeth before they're born, and some other even less interesting tooth and jaw characteristics. Tree shrews, elephant shrews, and otter shrews all pretty closely resemble true shrews, but that's not really by virtue of convergent evolution, that's mostly because of a lack of divergent evolution. This is the common ancestor of all placental mammals, so no, not everything is evolving into a shrew, we've been there, done that. Over to birds, we have the paraphyletic term raptor, or bird of prey. This mostly comprises higher aves, which includes eagles, hawks, kites, ospreys, secretary bird, as well as vultures, which may or may not be included, and owls, which are definitely not included. Falcons are notably absent. In fact, they're a pretty big distance away. You have to get through woodpeckers, kingfishers, parrots, and the enormous catch-all group of perching birds to unite them. And yet, to the naked eye, comparing a falcon to a hawk doesn't seem that much different from hawks to eagles. Carolus Linnaeus' original system separated out the vultures and owls, with all the diurnal predators lumped together. In fact, up until 2012, the falcons and owls were considered more closely related than the owls and hawks. Honestly, it is kind of fantastic that between all the interceding beak and wing shapes, both halves of the birds of prey ended up with similar beaks, similar wings, and similar eyes. But nature is amazing. So are we all evolving into hawks? Maybe. There's really only one false swan. Swans are separated from geese because they have more neck vertebrae. Their beak carves inwards like this, and they're bigger. The Coscaroba swan is larger and has a much more S-shaped neck, but it's a goose, as you can tell by beak. The reclassification of the Coscaroba swan as a false swan was evidently many people's first acquaintance with this phenomenon, but it's not exactly surprising. A longer neck lets you dabble more effectively, and size is good for fecundity. Also, they're white, which I guess is swan-like, but lots of things are white. So, are we evolving into a swan? I'd say probably not. True cobras are a rather narrow genus of cobras, mostly spitting cobras. Incidentally, the king cobra actually isn't included. Its hood is quite slim, all things considered, especially compared to the Indian cobra and other true cobras. They're also way bigger, eat other snakes, and don't have eye spots on the back of their head, so all in all, it's not like they lost that much cool factor. In general, a lot of venomous snakes have evolved a hood, mostly because when they get bigger, they get on the radar of bigger animals and need to be intimidating, especially in forested environments where your aposematism doesn't do the trick. There's also the false water cobra, which isn't even in a lapid, but these are mostly judged based on the hood. Monk snakes are also not included because that's not what I meant by hood. Go check out the hood, dog. Okay, so are we all evolving into cobras? I'll put the possibility below hawks, but still high. The term chameleon has already been synonymized with color changing, an adaptation that isn't super unique. It's common to most iguana-like lizards and some geckos, but the distinctive body shape of a chameleon is hard to replicate. But the Cuban false chameleon gave it a go. The basic idea of having a crest isn't a bad one, it just gives you more area to attach jaw muscles to. It's also useful for attracting a mate, although being able to change your color pretty much takes care of that. But that doesn't stop the chameleon forest dragon from wanting one too. And if the only prerequisite for evolving into a chameleon is growing a crest, then I think we are all evolving into chameleons. True salamanders awkwardly share a group with newts, and the term salamander can really refer to any Eurodelon. This is a common pattern. We have a clade of X and Y. We initially separated into X and Y, but then we realized X is actually the default, and Y is actually a single isolated creature, so we label the biggest group of X True X, and then give all the others a prefix. Except for Eurodela, there is no Y, so we have just split it up for no reason. Either way, it starts with true. So the true salamanders have rougher skin, and their ribs are less prominent. This isn't really copied in any other species. Larger ones like the Hellbender and the CGS have rougher skin by virtue of their size, but overall I don't think true salamanders deserve the name. Call them newts, and we're not all evolving into them. There are a lot of misnomers in fish which I don't care to go over, okay? Maybe just one, really quickly. True trout and salmon have a tiny adipose fin here, but are mostly recognized by their speckled pattern. This creates the misnomer of the spotted sea trout, which is a drummer and has a much larger fleshy dorsal fin of the drummers. Just being spotted isn't exactly a crazy idea. It's effective camouflage in gravelly environments, so no, we're not all evolving into trout. Eels, on the other hand, deserve more attention. True eels include the moray and belong to the order Anguilliformes, eel-shaped. The main defining feature of eels is, obviously, the lack of paired fins, but also that the fins that do exist form a continuous ring around the tail area. But there are many species of false eels. The electric eel is perhaps the most well-known. It's a knife fish. Its anal fin is long, but it lacks a dorsal fin. It can also mess with electricity, which is not an eel thing. There's also the sand eel, which is an absurdly broad term that refers to a bunch of different species that all fall under a group called lipped fish. These lack the anal fins. Swamp eels lack all fins entirely and are more closely related to betta fish. Spiny eels are in the same order as swamp eels. The enormous wolf eel does possess this ring, but it also possesses pectoral fins. It's more closely related to perch. Overall, there's a lot of eels scattered seemingly at random across the entire class of fishes. So, are we all evolving into eels? I say yes. Over to the invertebrates with bugs. I already made a video on this, but let's focus more on the biological aspect of this one as opposed to linguistics. So, true bugs is an order called Hemiptera, which includes stink bugs, assassin bugs, bed bugs, and water striders. It notably fails to include ladybugs, a type of beetle, doodlebugs, the larval form of some lacewings, lightning bugs, also beetles, and pill bugs, which aren't even insects. It's not like they really share that much in common with bugs. True bugs are identified by their piercing, sucking mouthparts and partially hardened wings. Beetles have chewing mouthparts and fully hardened wings, and pill bugs don't even have wings. And that's not all. Based on a survey I took for this video, only 56.1% of people would call a cicada a bug, despite it being a true bug. So the animals that they would say are just as much of a bug, or more, are lice, ants, beetles, fleas, gnats, mosquitoes, cockroaches, termites, earwigs, silverfish, pillbugs, centipedes, millipedes, and ticks. So, are we all evolving into a bug? From what I've seen, it seems like bug is evolving into everything. Over to crabs, what you've been waiting for. True crabs are in the order Brachyura, characterized by their distinctive shape as well as the fact that they have 10 legs. All false crabs fall under the sister group Animura. It doesn't really have a common name, so I don't mind naming the entire order false crabs. Crabs have evolved 5 times, once in the true crabs and then 4 times in the false crabs, but the divide for what counts as a crab is pretty strict, and it doesn't include hermit crabs like the coconut crab, and some of the more crabby squat lobsters like the yeti crab. Of course, hermit crabs don't really look all that much like true crabs, although you could say the same thing about the spider crab, which is one. Realistically, even the least squat of squat lobsters, the symmetrical hermit crab, are still pretty crabby, but just uncrabby enough. So, are we all evolving into crabs? Yeah. I've talked about worms on this channel for over 40 minutes. In this video, I indicate my thoughts that worms are so scattered it's impossible to find one of them as the true group. However, since it's the only one with a multisyllabic label, people seem to have gone with the segmented worms as the true worms, leaving false worms to include flatworms, roundworms, mealworms, penis worms, glowworms, blindworms, silkworms, acorn worms, shipworms, ribbon worms, velvet worms, bagworms, and ringworm. The majority of these are separate soft-body protostomes, some are hard-body protostomes, a lot are insect larvae, one's a deuterostome, there's a snake here, and one very confused fungus. I mean, a worm is basically just anything with no legs and a face that's hard to make out. Granted, no legs is kind of the default for bilaterians, but that's not to say it hasn't been re-evolved. Snakes, eels, caecilians, shipworms, which used to be clams, and insect larvae, it's clearly inevitable. Nature abhors legs, and we are all evolving into a worm. And finally, jellyfish. Cnidaria is divided up among anemones, coral, and jellyfish, but both true and false jellyfish are in Medusazoa, having an adult Medusa stage, the familiar jellyfish shape. True jellyfish are in Scyphozoa, characterized by their distinctive bell, as well as the body structure of 2 layers surrounded by jelly. hence the name. False jellyfish are also common, the main one being the cube-shaped box jellyfish, the freaky stalked jellyfish, and the minute siphonophores occasionally organized into massive colonials like the man-o-war. Again, this isn't exactly convergent, with the exception of the man-o-war. The man-o-war has tentacles and a head, even though it's not a single medusa. In fact, most of its individual zooids remain as polyps. That might just be the vocabulary used, but if it is, then get your stuff together and don't refer to medusae as polyps. So, perhaps it is convergent. Are we all evolving into jellyfish? Yes, a little bit. I'll see you next week. And if you have some free time between 8 and 9 p.m. EST, you might want to check out The Masked Singer tonight. May hear a familiar voice.